Hello and welcome to Audible River. I'm Alan Rice, and I am very happy to have with me Sandra Corcoran, author of Shamanic Awakening, My Journey Between the Dark and the Daylight. Sandra is an international speaker, workshop facilitator, integrative coach, certified hypnotherapist, and developed the therapeutic model, Alchemical Reintegration Therapy. Sandra is an arcane researcher, a master shamanic practitioner, and a sacred travel facilitator. Hello, Sandra. It's great to have you with me today.
Thank you so much. How are you doing, Alan?
Well, actually, I'm doing pretty good. I'm enjoying life at the moment. Thank you for asking. People don't usually ask me that. Sandra, I'm interested in finding out what is alchemical reintegration therapy. How did you come up with that, and what is it?
Well, over the years, I have been trained by 4 or 5 different indigenous cultures in their terms of healing, a lot of it involving what in the vernacular we would call soul retrieval or spirit retrieval. I'm also a psychotherapist, so I also follow a more psychological, scientific protocol, if you will, in terms of safety, therapy, drawing out of people the things that have brought them to the sessions. So what I was noticing as I was studying one thing for myself and using another model with my clients is that there really was a combination between the two, that the straight talking therapy, although it's important, doesn't always get to the somato emotional releases that the client might need. And so in blending the two, everybody has their own innate wisdom that's guided by their higher self, and it's bringing them to a place where they start to listen to that, because we all come into this earth walk with different personal experiences and traumas, losses, societal judgments that we need to collect those inner parts of ourselves, like the inner critic and the wounded child, if you want to use more psychological terms, which in the more indigenous traditions, they see as a single spectrum of energy that goes from dense to refined. So anywhere along that spectrum, at any given time during our day, we can be at one end or the middle or the top of the other. So what it really is about is kind of going through the issues, then taking them into a theta state, which is like a deep meditative state, bringing them back to certain places in their life that I can sense and see because it's like a hologram to me. And then helping them through certain impulses and certain dialogue and certain symbols and certain visualizations to clear and release that energy, and then bring those healthier parts of themselves back into what you might call your soul structure, your spirit structure. The more conscious ability to deal with what might have been unconscious or even conscious before, that wasn't allowing them to feel more joy, more success, more confidence, whatever you want to define at that point.
So those things you just said, the more joy, success, more confidence. My immediate thought is, aren't those just the products of getting to that inner awareness? You said a lot there, and I want to. So you talked about soul retrieval as something that's in the shamanic practices is talked about, I think. And then you talked about somato. Did I say this right? Somato release. What is that exactly?
That the cells in the body and the telemeters on the cells in the body, it's been proven in science and the work done in epigenetics, that those telemeters point in a certain direction determined by your belief or the structures, good, bad, or indifferent, that you've been through. And as you reintegrate the more refined aspects of the energy of who you are, so for example, moving from shame to self-worth, those telemeters point in a different direction, so that almost like a GPS system, universally you're calling in different energy, different experiences to yourself. And that's part of the reintegration period. It's not like the wound is gone, but it's in the recognition of the wound and where that wounded part of you might have gone, hidden, not working in its highest frequency for you, has gone, so that you can bring back a more refined sense of your own energy and then start to work with that in a more conscious way.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, I'm loving this now. Telemeters in the cells. I mean, did I hear that correctly? I mean,
So yeah, the telemeters are like little antennas that have to do with, it's not like you're calling the trauma to yourself or you're calling the shame to yourself. I don't want to give a person opinion of that, but because of the energetics of what you believe, those telemeters kind of keep calling similar situations to you in different ways at different times in your life to help you become conscious and restructure your energy to a more sovereign or autonomous place within yourself.
Okay, so yeah, I've heard about this in many different ways where we tend to attract the things that we somehow need to work on. I mean, just to say it simply, but you're putting this in a very, to me, it's like a scientific frame here that there's actually something going on in the cells of our body that are tuning us into this field of experience, so to speak. And
Well, everything is just frequency.
Okay.
So we're in the quantum field of frequency. Two of the speakers that speak very well on this are Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden. And they really explain this in a much more coherent way than I probably am in the moment. But it goes back to why I do the alchemical reintegration technique. It's because we're all capable. Our how to put this in a better way. Our subconscious knows what we need. Our conscious mind is only reacting to what we've experienced.
Okay.
So if there's really no past, present, and future, that's something we look at in a linear fashion to be able to work in this everyday reality. If everything then becomes a loop, then the loop comes back at some point in our life at a different level or a different frequency for us to kind of regain knowledge of ourselves and move in a different direction.
Okay. This is a wow moment for me. I gotta take a breath. Okay. Okay. Yes. Now, how do you do this? Does this involve hypnotherapy? Are you talking to people? And you said something about that you yourself have a visual sense of what your, let's call them your client or the person that you're helping. You have a visual sense of what they're experiencing. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you do it, and what it's like for you when you're helping someone?
Sure. We all have different skill sets. Some people are clairaudient, which means they hear. Some are clairsentient, which means they feel. Clairvisual, they see maybe auras or energies. Since I was little, I've always been able to feel what the other person's feeling. And because I thought it was my own, I often got in trouble for the ways I acted out on certain things until I had to learn discernment and learn that everything I was seeing and feeling wasn't necessarily mine. And then having to relearn that skill set, because you tend to bury that as a kid because you don't want to appear goofy or different or odd, and realizing that it is a skill that can help other people. But I had to go through a lot of that healing in myself to be able to recognize the difference between what's mine and what's somebody else's. And that's what helps me see and feel when I'm dealing with a client.
I see. So it's a lot of, but our our culture, I think that maybe you and I have similar experiences. I mean, I grew up in America here, in Western culture, I guess you'd call it. We, I don't think that we have, as a child, it would be. I'm not thinking that you find anybody that you could really talk to about what you're experiencing. So it sounds like you had to figure all this out on your own. Is that sort of accurate?
Yeah, but I think every child comes in with this ability, but we're told, that's fantasy, that was just a dream. Oh, you really didn't see that. That's not real. Why are you thinking that way?
Hmm.
And so we carry those constructs into each of the age groups we move into. Then you got the societal pressure and the peer pressure and the educational pressure.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is burying your skill sets. And that's the difference between the indigenous people that I've studied with, is they recognize what the skill sets of the children are at a young age, and they help the child enhance those instead of burying those. And that's kind of what was my wake-up call when I started working with the indigenous mentors and elders that I was blessed to be with, is they started to make my skill sets more conscious to me so that I wasn't burying that part of myself anymore, going back to what I was saying earlier about parts,
Hmm.
so that I could start to use those to heal myself, because nobody heals you, you heal yourself. But then also allowed me to use these to help other people find ways to heal themselves. So I'm just kind of like the mirror,
Hmm.
and people can either work with those parts, or they can continue to deny those parts or project them onto somebody else, because the healing really comes from the person you're working with, not from the person doing the work.
I see. I see. Because everything about our own selves is created with our intention from within. That's kind of what I'm gathering here. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, Alan, I think I could be wrong on this, but you've studied a little bit, I think, in the Andean mystical tradition.
I
Am I
have.
wrong on that?
You are not wrong. I have. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if you're familiar with what Freud would call the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious,
Hmm.
and maybe in the Peruvian or the Andean mystical tradition, what they call the Uhu Pacha, Kai Pacha, and Hanak Pacha, those are just, we occupy all those spaces at the same time. All of those constructs or dimensions are within us, but it's learning the frequency of each and how to balance that with more refined energy as opposed to more dense energy, rejection, projection, denial. But they're not separate from us. They're not layers. We occupy all of that at the same time. And kind of one of my biggest, like, with the new age right now, is everybody wants to ascend. Well, we're here to ascend in these 3D physical spacesuits that our souls are inhabiting. It's not that we're going to a different place or going out of our body or being more wooey. It's that we are becoming aware of a higher frequency that we're capable of. And as that wave takes us to the next awareness, that's part of the ascension process. It's not leaving the body or spaceships coming to take us to a different place. It's learning that we're sovereign beings that can vibrate at a different frequency. And that's what changes the dimension, because we're already in all 7 or 12 dimensions, whatever you believe in.
Hmm. So becoming aware of exactly just where we are here and now that's the real work of ascension. But I want to go back to what you were talking about. You use the Andean terms, yeah, Hanak Pacha, Kai Pacha, Uku Pacha, and this is something that I really want to talk to you about here right now, because I wanted to kind of flesh this out with someone who understands this. Because what you were just saying, and let me just say for the listeners, we're talking about what could be okay, like in Christian terms, we've got heaven, we have the earth, and then we have hell. I mean, that's like, like a stark kind of,
Yeah.
diagram.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we have, the super conscious or whatever you want to call it, the higher self, our normal mind, and then we have the unconscious. We have, and in ancient Greece, you have the gods on Mount Olympus, you have the earth here, and then you have the underworld where all the dead people live. So we have these parallels in many ways. I mean, even though with the way we look at physical reality, we've got astrophysics, we've got regular physics, and then we got quantum physics, right? And so
Right.
we have these different these reality, our experience, our consciousness. Divides into these three realms in almost any way we look. And I really love your point about how and I see this too, right? How you have a lot of people in the New Age movement who just want to reach for the stars, um, but we're maybe ignoring the deeper, earthy, heavier aspects of who we are, and leaving that in the unconscious. That make sense to you?
Yes, but also I think there are people who are aware that they're bullies, or aware that they're warmongers, or aware that they're pedophiles. So they're conscious of the destructive or the dense energy that they're in, but they also have the capability to be a higher vibration of themselves, going back to that single spectrum of energy that goes
Right.
from dense to light. In other words, even though there are three worlds, there are three, let's say, physics, there are three levels of subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. We occupy that all at the same time. It's just like that spectrum of energy. We're at a different place of awareness on it. But we always have choice and we always have control. And it's when we don't exercise our choice to be in more control of our sovereign self that we slip on that spectrum down to more dense energy. Now, some people are unconscious of that, but some people are very conscious of that. Does
R-
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does make sense. I mean, some people, maybe aware that they're operating on we'll call it a lower, more vulgar frequency, right?
Yeah,
More,
they're making a choice. They're making a choice.
right.
We always have choice. And I think a lot of times when people get stuck in their past or their family of origin or their pain or their trauma, that they don't think they have a choice, that they have forgotten that there's always a different way to integrate it, to become conscious of it, to change how it's affecting them by making a different choice.
Excuse me, by making a different choice. Um, I- I- Something that I go back to again and again and again is an epiphany that I had. Excuse me, about, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago now. Thought just came to my mind that at least 95% of what I experience is my own thinking. It
Yes.
and and then once I mean, and then that was, and this is what I always say next, is that was at once liberating and horrifying all at the same time.
um, I can understand that. I've been there. Um, but I think with each, but recognizing that at one point you were at 95,
Hmm.
maybe you have the potential to reach into yourself and learn a little bit more so that you don't stay at not knowing.
Right.
Each time you make a different choice, you're presented with a different spectrum of things that you have to make other choices around. But you're becoming aware of kind of how massive this thing called life is.
Yes. And what's been the big adventure for me in recent years is I keep asking myself, what is real? Who is real? And what I mean, that seems like a, kind of a silly thing to keep going back to, but the reason I do that is that, and we go back to, the science is that we know that we're creating models in our mind when we create models of the world. So everything that we experience, we're creating a model in our brain. Our brain is doing this, and so philosophers have all, for eons have asked the questions like, well, how do we know what's real if we're just taking in senses that our body, we're taking in information that our body can perceive, and we're creating a reality inside of ourselves. How do we know that any of this is actually real outside? But for me, though, there's something that happens when we connect with this, what you called earlier, a higher self. And this is something that's really hard to define, but once you touch it, you know exactly what it is, and it's hard to describe to anyone else. And it starts to open up a new way of seeing things that I trust that I'm seeing reality outside of myself. Does that make sense?
It does, and that brings up a massive amount of other spokes, because there's a lot of scientists wondering right now, is this a computer construct that we're in? There's others wondering, is this a hologram that's being projected to us that our mind sees as real? The question coming up with AI, do we give over our humanity and our connection to nature by implanting chips in our head, or letting computer robots? I just read this article of a Japanese company that's creating children in mechanical wombs.
Wow.
And as far-fetched as that sounds, the transhumanism we're going in, or the humanity we stick with, to me, that's the timeline branch we're in right now. And I don't think everybody's going to choose the same branch. But as a lot of my native teachers said, the choice is ours, and the world is going to look very different from whatever branch you choose in the next, I would say, 2 to 5 years, because we're exactly at that pivot point now where you're either going to go in one direction or another. And is AI good? Yeah, AI in medicine and other things is very good, but not when those robots, which they're proving, start to learn, because they're being taught by us, how to have the emotions to start to lie to us.
Oh.
I just read another scientific article of the robots they're creating when they start to imprint other things to change their awareness of things. They're catching on that means their demise. So they're lying so that the next generation doesn't come through. That's pretty scary.
So they are lying to protect themselves, the AI.
Right.
Oh, well,
Right.
that's very human, isn't it? And scary.
Exactly.
So I mean, right? Science fiction has, there's been this story among many science fiction writers about that we're going to create a new hyper intelligent type of being that will replace us, and this is what we're possibly facing right now with what you're talking about.
Yeah, and what some of my indigenous teachers said is, some of the, not all of the star beings that have and are visiting us, but are some of those almost like the androids that we create within ourselves in the future, where we can't breed and we can't speak, and we coming back through time loops to correct that in ourselves? I mean, there's a whole study out there, both scientifically and indigenously. Are some of those us in the future come back to stop us from what we're moving into, which is another whole conversation.
It is. I love that conversation because, right. I mean, because I recall as a young man walking in the woods, having this thought about time itself, and I was looking at a creek, and I saw the water running down, and I had this vision that this is what time is. It's one creek, and that
Yes.
if I put my finger in it, that's me experiencing time moving in one direction. But if I just could see time, it's all one thing. I mean, I had this thought as a child, but then now, like you were saying, the shamanic thinking, and once we understand, how mind itself it has so many possibilities that we limit ourselves from using our mind by our own thinking, by our own belief in our limits, that we
Which is,
go ahead.
go
Yeah.
ahead. No, I was going to say, which is why it's so important in all the traditions to come back to, whether you want to call it heart coherence or the Inca seed or um, the high heart energy, um, because that's the main brain that runs the computer. That's our mind.
Exactly. You know, I was having this thought this morning about, I was reading some stuff about tuning our mind to, like a, whatever it is. I mean, we want to attract certain things in our life, and it's all having to do with what we think. But the question in my, that I had in my mind was like, well, who's making these decisions? Who's driving the bus? Bus being the mind. Like, what is that? That is to me is the should be the focus of what I want to become aware of, is like who's at the all the way at the back of this thing making things happen.
Well, I know that in some of my studies, they've talked about three rivers
Mm-hmm.
Of energy that come through each of us when we sign that contract to come back into physical matter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those streams is our biologics. Are we going to choose what gender, what hair color, etc.? One is our ancestral lineage. So because quantum physics has already picked up that we carry within our DNA at least 14 generations back. That's a hell of a long time.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the third stream is our personal karma. And our personal karma isn't you shot me in my last life, so I get to shoot you in this life.
Okay.
It's more the patterns we repeat lifetime to lifetime that hold us in a loop from our sovereign self. And so if we're working with all of that and with this puny little mind that we have, the best way, and this just came to me recently, you're familiar with the monks that were walking?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the head monk said when he was being interviewed, they were saying there's so much chaos, so much turmoil, so much poverty, so much war, so much divisiveness. What do we do? And he said, you're only, basically, I'm paraphrasing, we're only responsible for ourselves, which is really what all my native teachers have taught at the core too.
Right.
And he said, you wake up every morning not trying to manifest peace, not trying to change the war. You wake up every morning and say, I choose peace. I am peace. And when you send that resonance through your body, sometimes it's just the simplest things. It does make you feel different. Instead of getting up, like I've been wont to do, and go to my computer on Facebook and start screaming at some political thing that's out there that enrages me.
Right.
That if I can just take a breath, and they all say that, it's on the breath. If you can just take a breath and make a choice, and make that choice be peace or joy or light or love, it's going to influence you in the next nanosecond a whole different way. And when I asked one of my teachers, well, what happens when that anger returns? And she said to me, you just say to that voice in your head, not now. I choose peace or love or light, whatever in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I've done that, not now gets pushed out a little further so that my frequency stays at a different place on that spectrum I was talking about earlier, instead of me collapsing into the egoic self that wants to yell at somebody else that doesn't believe the same way I do.
Wow. You touched on a lot there that my friends have been talking about, and people I know are, trying to. These times that we're in right now they're really challenging us to ask a lot of questions of ourselves, and the very things that you were just talking about. It's like how.
But we all chose to come here at this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
This is a pivotal moment in the history of the Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, our scientists can go back 450,000 years, but the formation of this planet of experience, of duality, goes back so much further, and that the whole thing we've just been through with the Neptune-Saturn conjunction that just happened last week, we're in a time now where we're going to have to meld fantasy and belief with structure and logic. And in the cycles of the stars, as we're also have moved into the age of Aquarius and all of that, we're in a whole new construct now that we've never experienced before. They can't even figure out, when they go far back, when both Neptune and Saturn were at 0 point Aries. They can't go back in our memory, in our history of when that was, because it was before first time. So we're at a new first time.
It's really crazy that you say that, because in my own personal life, like today, I feel like that is my personal experience, that I'm having a first time for a lot of things. And I guess many other people are kind of saying similar things, but it's me, my own life, I mean, the ground I walk on, feels like things are changing dramatically almost every day.
Yeah, and I think what's curious is, if you follow a little bit the Chinese model, last year was the wood snake. So everything of structure had to be transformed, transmuted, shed. And we just last week moved into the year of the fire horse, which there's no water in the year of the fire horse. So it's the one element in the 5-element Chinese system that's eliminated this year. There's no water. And so how are we going to extinguish not our passion, because we want that to fuel us, but not to go over the cliff where passion becomes egoic and it's our passion versus somebody else's, because everything is going to move so fast right now. It's going to be unbelievable by spring of next year how different everything looks on every level.
So all of us, everybody listening, be careful what you're thinking, be careful what you're choosing, because this is going to become your reality. Is that what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking about.
Oh boy, these are important things. We can't just like go along. Well, we can. I mean, lots of us can be comfortable in our lives, and we go to work and we have a couple beers and we watch some TV. We go to sleep and we do it again tomorrow, and maybe we can get some comfort in that. But I think that the impression I get that most people have like a background anxiety about not understanding what's happening and just trying to maintain some control of their immediate environment to have some comfort in that, but still this background anxiety never goes away. And
I think everybody just wants what's good for their children. They want food, they want heat, they want the basic things that make life livable. And a lot of people don't have that right now. There's no denying a lot of people have scarcity. And a lot of people have pain, and that, we're in that quantum soup of anxiety. So a lot of people that can't bring it back to their own personal center on the breath or with a choice or even how to pay the rent next month, that anxiety is real. And it's not about denying that there's anxiety. We have to recognize and feel our way through anxiety to get back to center. I'm not saying I'm good at that every day, because you can't possibly hold that highest refined energy 24/7, 365 days. We're not Christed souls yet. We're in the process of learning what Yeshua was trying to teach us, but we certainly aren't there on an individual, communal, or global reality yet. Just, look around. Anxiety is where most of society is right now. Or denial.
Or denial, right? Yeah, which is a reaction to this anxiety. I like though that you've mentioned the breath several times, because it's something that and also relating this to the Andean tradition. There's a concept of reciprocity, right? That we are in a constant exchange, or we have a relationship with everything and everybody. And that the way that we engage, exchange, and relate to everything and everybody is important, that it's an essential part of who we are and how we, are becoming. And the breathing is like the most basic part of engaging in reality, because we're taking in the world in that breath, and then we're letting out our own breath back into the world. And so I'm just thinking of that, and it seems metaphorical, but it's also real and physical, that we are engaging every moment, every time we take a breath, and that if we focus on what we're taking, what kind of energy that we're maybe asking for when we take that breath, that it changes us. Is this kind of what you were talking about?
Yes, and I think, um, as humans, as being in these 3D free will spacesuits, we come in on the breath and we exit on the breath. But it's what we do with the breath in between that spectrum of birth and death that makes the choices that come to us and that we live. And I'm not saying that some people would choose what they've been through, but somewhere in those three rivers that I've talked about, there was a pattern they needed to face or look at or rediscover or organize or bring into balance, or they wouldn't be experiencing it. And that's the hardest thing when I work with people at a therapeutic level, especially people who have been abused. It's like, I didn't choose that. And
Oh,
no, your body, your mind, your little kid didn't choose that. But on some level, you needed to experience that for something else. And I'm not here to tell you what that experience is, but maybe I can help you put to rest the trauma that that experience caused.
it seems like, um, I'm just thinking here. I don't know if I've met anyone in my entire life who has not experienced trauma, in some way, right? And we can't. And then the other thing I like to say is that you can't judge other people's trauma. I mean, like, oh, well, I had a car accident, and that's like, what did you have? You lost a job and had to go find another one. So, but everybody has the things that happen that create these, um, well, traumatic experiences or challenges that, if we it forces us to 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 engage in some way in something that's beyond our normal way of doing things. What am I trying to say? It forces us to grow in a way that gets us out of it, to heal, if we make that choice. And if we don't, well, then that's an opportunity missed, I guess. Um, but this is what I'm learning, that all the trauma has taught me, and I'm getting old, and fortunately, I think I'm getting better in some ways. So I hope.
I think we both are, Ellen.
Yeah, right. Learning to make better choices, but it's the terrible experiences that almost always involve my choices going into it. Ignoring danger signs or whatever, and like saying, "Well, I can do this" or whatever. Or sometimes it's something accidental, but that making the choices to connect with whatever resilience, or that what you were talking about, the higher self, or this sovereign self, that becomes better able to be expressed in me by facing these challenges. Okay, I said a lot trying to get to that point. Um, Becoming a better
I,
me. Yes.
I think I want to give you a personal example that I don't like to give, but it is the rawest for me.
Okay.
Um, I had a child that died when she was 16 months old.
Wow.
Now, was that my choice? No. Did I call that in for a reason? For many years, I railed that that wasn't true.
Hmm.
But at the time that it happened, and I might have shared this with you once before, I know I've shared it in my book, that's when the Native Indigenous women started to come forward and say that I had promised that I would work with them. I had no memory of that. I was a suburban mom, a special needs teacher who had just lost her child. I could not wrap my head around the fact that this wasn't being done to me. but it was being done for me, that my child had given me the gift of such deep pain that I had to go into the darkest of places to meet these beings of light and learn about my own light. And so sometimes the darkest experiences that we say karmically, I never would have chosen that.
Mhm.
Why did that happen? Are pivotal moments that can turn your life around in a whole different direction that you never expected you would lead.
Wow. Yes. I like that you talked about you went into that deepest darkness to find the beings of light. That is something that it's difficult to. It takes a lot of faith. I'll just say that faith in something that going there is going to be the right thing. And I think for me, sometimes it feels like it's the only thing I can do. That I just have to go there.
Well, and it goes back to, in kind of a trite way, when you're talking about something that heavy, it goes back to that, knowing that there's something that exists, that we exist beyond these physical bodies, whether you want to call it God or great mystery or the all that is or the absolute, that the experience here is finding the I in the I am that I am, that we are part of Source and Source is part of us. And when we come through that threshold into these experiences, yes, we forget that we're part of the all that is, and the all that is part of us, but it's part of the course of what we're here to learn.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I just want to thank you for sharing that story about your daughter, and that was
Oh, you're welcome.
deeply
You're welcome.
touching. And yeah. Oh, and so now you mentioned the three rivers. It's kind of like the three worlds, and again, we're talking. Oh, mind, body, and spirit. Okay, that's one. That's one that's sort of like a term that's thrown around now in our modern culture, that we're mind, body, and spirit. So the biologics, that's the body, and then the ancestral. So we have this body, and then we have the genetics of our ancestors that we're carrying with us. That's the other river, and then we have the
Right.
karma, a karma that we're bringing in, like that's energetically things patterns that we need to resolve, that we're bringing in with us into this life. These are three rivers, but again, it's three aspects that we are integrating. And I think that often, there's different like traditions or religious practices or philosophies or whatever that will tend to focus on one of the three. Like you're talking about the New Age, we're all going to the stars. We're going to ascend to the highest level, and we're not all concerned with the lower stuff. But the real manifestation, though, happens when we can integrate and be present in all of it all the time.
Yeah, and that's a huge job, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, and it takes. I think for me, what helps is just getting the idea and then trying not to so much, right? But I mean,
Yeah. Well said.
yeah, because it seems like the more I try, the more I go off, I go off on the ditch. So I just kind of have to like let it come to me, and ride it. Once I say like, okay, I like this, I want this, I want to experience the three worlds. I want to experience, my, the other thing that's come up for me recently is recognizing that I have this unconscious self that's doing things in the background. That's starting to, this is, for the first time in my life, I've become aware of this other self that's actually doing things in this other realm that's appearing in my material world. Okay, this is sounding crazy, maybe, but
Nope, not at all.
not at all. Okay.
Because we're multifaceted beings, and what's happening during these timelines is we're starting to experience different realities of ourselves, different
Okay.
aspects of ourselves. So
Hmm.
that sounds completely logical to what's happening.
Okay. I'm glad it sounds logical to you because I am glad. I'm very glad. I just thought I would bring it up. Um, oh, hey, you know what? I'm gonna switch a little bit here because I think that we got like a yeah, we got some time left. I wanted to talk about you do a kind of we could call it divination, right? When with you do tarot readings with the Toth Tarot deck, and so I want to talk. First, tell me what that is. What is Toth Tarot?
Okay, well, a couple of things here. The
Toth.
Toth Tarot came through the work of Lady Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. And Crowley gets a bad name, and certainly for certain reasons, I can understand why.
Yeah.
But the deck itself was painted by Lady Frida Harris, and it's painted in what are called yantras. So, in the same way that a mantra is an audio oral repetition, yantras are symbolic visual repetitions. So you get imprinted. And so when I was introduced to this deck, I hadn't studied it. I didn't know anything about it, but a friend of mine was going to the Warburg Museum in London, and she worked at Harvard at the time, and you needed a university pass to get there to be able to see the original drawings of Lady Frida Harris,
Oh, wow.
which stand about, I don't know, 24 inches by, let's say, 14 inches.
Hmm.
They're quite large, and they're in portfolios. And they have been taken out of circulation for a while now because people were starting to mark them, which everybody wants to leave graffiti someplace.
Ooh.
But essentially, what happened was when I opened the packet, the Fool was the first card, which is one of the major arcana cards. And there's only 22 major arcana cards in a regular tarot deck.
Hmm.
And the Fool starts the progression and it ends the progression. So it's like life.
Mm.
And energetically, I know this is going to sound totally absurd to your listeners, but the Fool jumped off the page and landed on my shoulders.
Mm.
And it's like time passed, but it was like a binary code system kept going through me, and I had no idea what was happening until my friend came over and pulled my sleeve, and she said, "You've been standing here for 15 minutes. Other people want to see the cards."
Oh.
And I was totally disassociated in that moment. I went back and I sat down, and I knew how to read the deck after that. I just knew how to read the deck.
Wow.
So I combined that with my psychotherapy. And in the process, I've learned how to read the Akashic records, which is the imprint of everything that's ever occurred through time. So that when I'm doing a reading on somebody, it's like when you were talking a minute ago about being aware of another part of yourself.
Yeah.
I feel like a part of myself step aside, and this other information and energy comes through for the other person. Because in the Egyptian mythology, Toth or Thoth was the wisdom keeper who wrote from the heart, who was one of the survivors of Atlantis that came to Egypt to imprint a new culture, along with some of the other seven sages.
Wow.
So there's a whole kind of linkage here that happened to me with learning the cards through the ethers, being able then to see into the hologram of somebody else to give them information just as clarity or a different option. I never tell them what to do, or this is total fact. If it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate.
Hmm.
And then it tied in my whole experiences when I ended up going to Egypt. Many years ago, I was taught there by Nikki Scully and Norman D. Ellis, who are icons in their field, and started 13 years ago, I guess, bringing my own groups to Egypt. So there's this whole story that connects a number of different pieces, and each one was based on making a choice to go to the next place I was called.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And
There's
we all have those moments. That
yeah,
sounds like a big moment
yeah.
because, but it really wasn't. I mean, it's like every piece was a breadcrumb that led to the next learning experience for me,
Mm-hmm.
often through the death of something, whether it was a belief or a friend or a mentor or a child, that then took me to opening to a different perspective and making a choice of, if that resonated for me, how to use it to help somebody else. And if it didn't work for them, it, everything is resonance. It wasn't the key for them, but for me, those were my keys.
Wow. I'm getting this vision of, while you're talking about this, of your story, and of like a continual expansion, like a continual blossoming and branching and growing new realms of yourself. I love hearing about this. Now, going back to when the fool jumped on your shoulder, I'm not gonna let that go. So
It does sound crazy, doesn't it?
no, but you know what? I'm going to admit that. See, when I think I was like 14 years old, I had joined this occult book club that I found the address on the back of a comic book that I had when I was a kid, and I got all these like great books, and one of them was Aleister Crowley's book, The Toth Tarot, and I read the whole thing, and one of the things that stuck in me from whatever that was 50 years ago, that that the cards are living beings.
Mm-hmm.
That was the main message I took away from all this. That every card was a yeah. You said right. So that each card represents like a living reality, and that you can connect to whatever is alive in that card through the card. They're like they become portals of a sort. And I like that. I'm going to say this word again. Yantras. That's not one that I haven't heard that said a lot, but like the mantras we're all familiar with, because we say that we're going to say Om Mani Padme Hum, right, and we're going to become enlightened if we say it enough. But the yantras, these cards, if no one has seen them, I looked on. They're amazingly illustrated with the um, symbols and illustrations that are very what would you call it? Yeah, the mystical symbolism is so strong. The research is some of the best I've ever seen in anything I've ever looked at. I mean, this is like, you know, Tibetan illustrations, or the Buddhists are really good at this too, and the Hindus extraordinarily good at this.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, Lady Frida Harris not only studied Egyptology, she studied Hinduism, and she was a yoga expert, and she was a painter.
Wow.
Um, so she brought all that iconography into the art. And, one of the, and this is just, again, my belief, every reader does it a little bit differently, but
Hmm.
to me, it's the major arcana, the 22 major arcana cards. That's the characters on your stage, or the aspects or parts of yourself. And then, like in a playing card deck, the cards that go from 1 to 10 are where you fall in the storyline, and how the cards are trying to help you move through that story with a different choice or a different opinion or a different perspective. But one of the ways that I learned within myself through, I guess, Thoth to do the teaching is, Bert Hellinger and his wife did a form of therapy called constellation therapy.
Mm.
So I see the first 5 cards as the parts of ourself. And then the second 5 cards are the direction each one of them needs to go in to learn, because we didn't come here realizing we were perfected beings.
Mm.
And then the third set of 5 cards becomes the test or the challenge or the dark night of the soul that aspect has to go through to learn about itself at a higher level. And then the next 5 cards are the gift they give themselves for having the courage to make the choice to learn more about themselves. And the bookends of that are the Fool, who does the dance,
Mm.
and the Universe card, which is how we keep having the opportunity to rebirth ourselves into new understandings, consciousness, paradigms, whatever you want to call it. So that the entire deck becomes a storybook of different parts of ourselves that are learning to be who we are.
And when you do a reading, I counted 20 cards when you were talking about how many cards you got. 4 sets of 5 that you talked about just now. And
Yep,
out of what's the total number of cards in the deck?
78.
78. So you got 20 out of 78 cards that are arranged in an order that you have chosen, and that this is telling a story for the reading you're doing at that moment.
So I'll give you an example. Let's take the High Priestess.
Mm-hmm.
The cards aren't gender specific. So the High Priestess energy can be used with any gender you want to identify yourself as.
Okay.
The High Priestess energy is inner consciousness. So the top part of her in this deck looks very etheric. She's open to the heavens.
Oh.
It's about her passion and her creativity and her manifestation and her intuition. And then the bottom part of her is very solid, looks almost masculine. It's very logical, very directed, very right-willed. Across her lap, you see what looks like a bow and arrow.
Okay.
And that's the separation between the intuitive self and the logical self. At the very bottom, you'll see a camel. And the camel relates to only we can do the inner work ourselves. That camel has everything in it to make its way across the desert. It has everything it needs to change and choice and make choices in life. So then she wants to learn about herself. And what does she go to? She goes to the Chariot card. So the Chariot card looks very armored. And it's not that we're armoring ourselves. It represents her discernment as she travels the road forward into her destiny. You'll see a crab at the top of her head. It's like, trust your gut, trust your intuition. And you'll see 4 figures at the bottom pulling the chariot.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 4 faces of God, or the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. But all the feet are on the wrong bodies, which means in life, as we make our choices, as we discern better for or worse, we take 2 steps forward, but then have to take 1 step back and assess. Am I going in the right direction? Am I making the right choice? In the inner workings of my mind, am I choosing what is going to balance my logic and intuition, or am I still seeing it as either or instead of and both? Then her test, or her dark night of the soul, is the Hanged Man card. The Hanged Man is held by the Ankh. So lifetime to lifetime, we can work this out. And you see all the bars behind. It's not that she's stuck, or it's not that we're stuck in our mind, but our mind is full of so many options. The snakes at the bottom represent inner wisdom. And we have to understand at certain points on our path, we have to stop and take a breath. We're not stuck, we're in transition. So that's a very transitional card. And when we recognize we're in transition and that it is and both, not either or, we move into the Star card, which is clarity. It's bringing our spiritual sense from the grail above her down through her 3D free will spacesuit to the earth plane to help bring clarity as a grounding rod of light to the earth. But the journey starts by doing the inner work.
Wow. So did you just like walk me through a succession of cards that are a natural progression in the deck? Is that what we just did? Did we just walk through?
I just walked you through the constellation as I see it of the High Priestess.
Oh.
So I told you there's the first 5 cards, and under each one is the next 5. So if you lay them out 1 through 5, and then you go 6 through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you keep going like that. Then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Wow.
And then the Fool and the Universe are different. It's more of the dance.
I love this. And then when you were talking about the High Priestess card, again, we were referencing 3 levels. Where the upper, you were talking about the intuitive level being above her, and that the logical being below, and then in her lap is a bow and arrow that sort of, I don't know, represents. Well, you said the the delineation between, or this, the I forget the word.
It's the struggle.
The
It's the
struggle.
struggle we have in our head
Uh-huh.
of it has to be, is it either or? And her reality when she gets to the star card is, no, it's and both. I am both spirit and matter.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Now it makes sense. I am both spirit and matter.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so we have to learn to recognize ourselves in all these modes. I think that I mean, there's different traditions. I mean, like I know that there's like what is there, certain Christian philosophies or whatever, that believe that we have to deny the flesh, we have to deny all material pleasures, and then that doesn't seem right. But it does. I think that for some people's their own path, that they need to ignore an area to focus on. Like if they need to focus on the spirit, maybe they need to ignore the material for a while to really get used to what that looks like. But
Well, I just agree with that, Ellen,
you do?
because in this walk right now, we are matter.
Yeah.
We are part of nature.
Mhm.
We can't disengage from that. We are and both.
Always.
And so it's not, I think, and I don't want to offend anybody in their religion, but
Hmm.
I think religion and has done one of the worst things in the world in terms of separation. My religion is better than yours. I have to sacrifice this for that. Christ didn't come as a martyr. Christ didn't come as a Christian.
Hmm.
Christ came as a avatar to show us that we too have this within ourselves to be Christed beings of light when we remember our sovereign sense of self when we walk on the earth.
When we
So
remember,
there,
yeah.
Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. Muhammad wasn't a Muslim. Those were political energies at the time that made it into a construct to be able to control people.
This is a really, really important concept. Yeah, let's do this again. Jesus wasn't a Christian, Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, and Muhammad wasn't a Muslim. That who they were was, and they were an original expression of this. What would you call it? This
I think they're avatars of light that had already remembered their sovereignty within the eye of the I am, and that they were here to help us learn the same.
and then we could all be doing this, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
He said, Yeshua said, what I can do, you can do too.
And that is the message. But instead, we turn it into worshiping. Like,
Instead, we turned it into penance and original sin and paying the coffers to get out of jail free. And
right.
yeah, it turned into a political system instead of a system of faith.
Right. Because
labeled as faith.
Because the people
Unfortunately.
labeled as faith, because the people who like to have power saw that this was a powerful message. And
most people like to be led, Alan.
yes.
That's why we've got doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. That's the whole part. Well, it's the whole part of choice.
Yes.
Are
Right.
you a sovereign being that gets to choose?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're not hurting somebody else, or are you giving your power over to somebody else to tell you what to do? As a therapist, I tell my clients, if you're still sitting in that seat in 2 years, I haven't done my job and you haven't done yours.
Okay, well then you're a really good therapist. So, yes. Oh, yeah. That is something that I don't really hear from. I mean, me. I've done therapy. I mean, like, who hasn't? Maybe a lot of people, but I've been through some therapists, and none of them ever said that to me. So I like that message quite a lot.
Well, you're not. I think many times, like any other profession, people can get complacent, but you're not here to pay my rent.
Okay. Well, Sandra, I've loved this conversation, and I think we could do this all day. I honestly do, because I love talking to you, and I love getting your.
Thank you.
I really do. I love getting your views on things, things that really matter to me. This is a wonderful conversation. But in the interest of, being responsible with listeners' time and all that kind of thing, I think this is.
In the effort to cohere to linear time,
Yeah,
we're done.
Well said, Sandra. Yes. Right. Thank you so much for joining.
It was a great pleasure, Alan. I enjoyed talking to you as well.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. And
All right.
And that is all for this episode of Audible River. And wherever you are on this wonderful planet, we would love to know what you think about our podcast. So please leave a comment or email us at audibleriverpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.